Our 2.5-hour ceremonial journey to the top of Mt Abang begins as it has for over 1,000 years. Balinese priests and local villagers make this journey twice a year or more. With permission from the local priests from the temple of Tuluk Biu at Kintanami, we are filming a traditional religious ceremony at the top of the third tallest mountain on Bali. Measuring 2,152 meters in height, the climb is considered demanding for the physically fit. The rough terrain, undeveloped for centuries, is jungle in every sense of the word, and the local people navigate this climb either barefoot or wearing flip-flops, and most carrying ceremony supplies, and some carrying 2 to 3 kilos. At the top of Mt Abang is Puncak Tuluk Biu Temple, where our ceremony will take place after a brief setup of offerings that will adorn the temple grounds. In 1926, Mount Batur erupted, devastating the western side of the lake and destroying Desa Batur. Landslides from Mt Abang buried Desa Arhoang. Following this natural disaster, the villagers moved the temple by carrying out the sacred relics from the ruins of the old temple and rebuilding the temple at its current location, on the rim of the crater overlooking Mount Batur, Lake Batur, and Mt Abang at Kintanami. After our 2.5-hour ascent to the top of Mt Abang, the priest and many people ready the temple and grounds for the impending ceremony that will take about an hour and a half. As I wait with camera at the ready, I'm struck by the color of all the umbrellas, the many woven baskets full of flowers, the many happy smiles, and the aroma of mystic incense permeating throughout the mountaintop. The scene is indeed magical as the misty clouds float through the air and melt away. Here we are, about 50 people on top of the spiritual mountain peak, approximately 90 meters long by 22 meters wide and 2,152 meters up in the clouds. The prayers begin, one priest at first, then another, and another. Listen to their hearts. Let me explain the symbolism of the Balinese act of prayer. There are generally 8 steps to the act of devotion. Asana and pranayama, the incense is lit, and the person prepares themselves to pray in a composed, peaceful, harmonious state. The men sit cross-legged, and the women kneel. Breathing is controlled and slow. Kara Shadana. The incense smoke, which rises to make connection with the gods, is gathered in the hands and swept across the face, linking the person with their gods. Atmatatwa, praying with open, empty hands to connect the soul and to the gods. Sriyana Mastuti, one flower, often a white frangipani, is held up in the fingertips, recognizes the supreme god, Sangayang Widiwasa, who is symbolized by the daily rising of the sun. Trimurti, recognizing the trinity of Brahma and Vishnu and Iswara or Siva, the gods of creation, preservation, and destruction, the cycle of life. This is done by holding colored flowers up in the fingertips. Sami Daya, 3 or more flowers are held up to symbolize the great unknowable one, Sangayang Widiwasa, the trinity of Brahma, Vishnu, and Siva, and all of the lesser gods, which are visualized in many forms and for many purposes throughout the world. Shanti, a closing prayer with open hands again, seeking inner peace, peace between peoples and world peace. This part of the prayer finishes with a smile to recognize the happiness of the peace. Nunusturta, this part occurs when the prayer is made in a temple. The person waits quietly until the priest sprinkles holy water over the person. The right hand in the cupped left is then held up and filled with holy water 3 times for drinking, then 3 times to wash the head and face. A final handful of water is followed by grains of rice which are pressed to the forehead, the temples, and the throat, with the final few eaten and sprinkled onto the head. God in Hinduism has what is referred to as many different personalities with many different names, some explainable and understandable within our human capacity, and some not. A basic principle in Balinese Hindu and Hinduism in general is that both good and evil exist as part of nature and in some sense as part of God's divine plan for humanity and our universe. The key word would be karma. And as trust in not only the principle that doing good will reward with good, but also that in order to understand evil and less than good, each of us will, in some sense, have to experience these on our own individual spiritual path and the collective spiritual path of society. As the rain begins, it doesn't take long before the intensity picks up and many, if not all, of the locals pull on their plastic ponchos with hoodies. Only us four bules, which means white man, an Indonesian language term, no disrespect intended, bring no protection, get soaked, and begin to shiver. My friend Steve is given an old half of a tire tube which he held over the camera gear during the shoot as the rain continued to pour. Since ancient times, the entire Batur Kintamani crater is where most Balinese temples priests collect their tirtha, holy purified water. There are 11 locations in the area, each with its own unique spiritual function and purpose. In addition to these 11 tirtha locations, there are several others less significant located towards Mt Abang and the many hilltops located towards the northern part of the lake and the crater. All these sites have a temple dedicated to them with a strong historical indication of Temple Tuluk Bayu being the center of this creation. Balinese culture is a complex event characterized by diversity and adaptability. A central dictum in Balinese thinking is the notion of desla, kala, patra, time, place, and situation. A dynamic notion holding that traditional concepts will blend in harmony with the new. The Balinese distinguish between sakala, the material realm, and niskala, the eternal. Reality is a coincidence of the material and the immaterial realms. One does not exist without the other. The world is the product of the interaction of sakala and niskala. Such explanations attempt to render the material world comprehensible by drawing on mystical and eternal forces from the unseen world. Tectonic activity contributes to a sense of uncertainty which appears to have had a significant impact on the Balinese psyche. This is accompanied by religious practices that seem to have supplicatory elements.
Ampus pedante yang namuna masya huam sang budak kala petak rausa yang kurwa muli ta seraring pula sang budak kala rausa yang naksina muli ta seraring naksina de sang budak kala jana rausa yang mudi jana ta seraring pasi muli sang budak kala rausa yang utara muli ta seraring utara de sang budak kala mangka rausa yang mandi muli ta seraring mandi de sang budak kala sedang rausa yang muli ta seraring
As the ceremony continued, several priests are now performing an intense vocal prayer synchronized together as one. It was at this time we witnessed a breathtaking occurrence for which to this day my arm hairs stand on end when I think of this. The intense rain begins to subside little by little and then stops altogether. The clouds begin to swirl straight above us. Thinner the clouds become, more translucent, and then straight above, in the 12 o'clock position, blue skies appear. Not through a symmetrical circle, but an opening with the artistry of cloud formations all around the edges, slight at first, then more intense as the sun now beams as if to acknowledge our very presence. Here, a priest from the temple of Tulug Biu readies himself to perform a yagna, or ritual sacrifice. Due to the graphic nature of this ritual, we did not include the actual footage in this film. High priests are qualified to perform the Pancha Yagnas, the 5 sacrifices for the gods, the rishis or gurus, the humans, the ghosts, and the ancestors. Animal sacrifice is used in almost all the temples for the bhutas, the underworld. It is performed so that the animal gets a better life. The animals say thank you when sacrificed. If you are just killing an animal, it is violence. Sacrifice done with puja is not violence. It is a path to moksha, liberation for the animal. The priest's prayers have now moved into more of a calming tone, and after about 10 minutes, the clouds again swirled into a frenzy and the sun disappears behind them. The rain begins and slowly intensifies back to the level it was before. Steve and I looked at each other while the camera was rolling. I could see it in his eyes, those intense blue eyes, in utter amazement and joy over what we had just witnessed. Our jaws dropped. The look on our faces and the feeling in our hearts, priceless. As the priests direct the closing moments of prayer, here you see one of the acts of devotion called Samai Daya, where 3 or more flowers are held up to symbolize the great unknowable one, Sangayang Widi Wasa, the trinity of Brahma, Vishnu, and Siva, and all of the lesser gods which are visualized in many forms and for many purposes throughout the world.
Om Swastiastu, Om. Saya selaku kesenaman di Pura Tulug Biu Batur menenangkan dengan sebenarnya rentetan acara upacara karya ngusabe ring Pura Tulug Biu Batur pada tahun 2012. Acara pertama tanggal 4 Krama Deser ring Pura Tulug Biu Batur Ngemargiang Puja Wali Ide Betari ring Puncak Gunung Abang Termaning ring Segara Danu pada tanggal 5 bulan 4 2012 Ide Betari ring Pura Tulug Biu Batur Katuran Bakti Pengodal Turmaning Bakti Pesucian pada tanggal 6 bulan 4 2012 pada hari ini puncak karya ngusabe ring Pura Tulug Biu Batur. Selanjutnya pada tanggal 14 bulan 4 tahun 2012 Ide Betari ring Pura Tulug Biu Batur Katuran Bakti Pengluhur utawi meseneb. Enggih amunike presiden untuk ditiang atur uninge ring umat sebagai Bali utawi ring sejagat titiang menawi wenten iwang atau titiang atur uninge titiang banget unas pangpura. Om Santi 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 Om.
In this world of volcanoes, rivers, valleys, and radiating ridges, certain places are deemed safe and others are not. Steep valley slopes and mountains are regarded as magically powerful zones unfit for human habitation. It comes as no surprise that they are also susceptible to landslips, following heavy rain and earth tremors. The mountain word kaja, sea word klad, axis is vital. Mountains are associated with purity. The land or middle is the realm of humans and largely neutral, while the direction of the sea is associated with impurity. The passage of the sun denotes the east as an auspicious direction and the west as inauspicious. Combining these directional and spatial concepts, a model of the Balinese cosmos emerges. Balinese cosmology identifies organizing and disorganizing forces in the world, dharma and adharma. Seeking to maximize dharma as a way of counterbalancing adharma is a fundamental goal. Galungan is the day when the victory of dharma, or justice truth, wins over adharma. It is when the family ancestors descend into the family temples, led there by seeing the long curved bamboo pole pinjor that are erected in front of every Balinese house. For 10 days, the ancestors are feted in the family temples. Many temple festivals occur at this time of year, and there is great feasting. On the last day, Kuningan, the ancestors are seen off with a flurry of yellow offerings and yellow rice. Baris is a traditional war dance of Bali, accompanied by gamelan in which a solo dancer depicts the feelings of a young warrior prior to battle, glorifying the manhood of the triumphant Balinese warrior and displaying the sublimity of his commanding presence. Originally, it was performed as a religious ritual to dedicate warriors and their weapons during a temple feast. The dancer may bear a kris, a spear, a bow, or other weapons, depending on the variant performed. Baris literally means line or file, referring to the line of soldiers who serve the Rajas of Bali. At first he takes the stage. The dancer's movements are studied and careful, as if he were seeking out foes in an unfamiliar place. When he reaches the middle of the stage, hesitation gives way to self-assurance. He rises on his toes to his full stature, his body motionless with quivering limbs. He whirls on one leg, his feet tread the ground to the tumult of the gamelan, and his face renders a storm of passions of a quick-tempered warrior. There are 2 main types of Baris dance. The non-ritual dance explained earlier is the one performed by a solo dancer. However, there are over 30 different types of ritual Baris dances, each of which is performed by a group of people, still imitating the movements of the warrior. A gamelan is a traditional musical ensemble from Indonesia, typically from the islands of Java and Bali, featuring a variety of instruments such as metallophones, xylophones, drums and gongs, bamboo flutes, bowed and plucked strings. Vocalists may also be included. For most Indonesians, gamelan music is an integral part of the Indonesian culture. The term refers more to the set of instruments than to the players of those instruments. A gamelan is a set of instruments as a distinct entity, built and tuned to stay together. Instruments from different gamelan are generally not interchangeable. As the ceremonial parade signals the end of the day's prayers, it is clear that Bali, Earth's chakra number 10, the world's purification center, is complex in its societal and spiritual structures. Through the eyes of the camera, you have been given an intimate view of an ancient ritual ceremony on top of Mt Abang on the rim of the Batur crater, the Baris dance of an ancient warrior on the temple grounds, a peek into the Balinese spiritual realm and acts of devotion. I want to give many thanks to all involved in the making of this documentary and to the beautiful people of Bali, the island of the gods.
menatap lembayung di langit Bali, dan ku sadari betapa berharga kenanganmu. Dikala jiwaku tak terbatas, bebas berandai mengulang waktu, hingga masih bisa kurai dirimu, sosok yang mengisi kehampaan kalbuku. Bilakah diriku berucap maaf, masa yang telah ku ingkari dan meninggalkanmu. Oh, cinta, teman yang terhanyut arus waktu, mekar mendewasa, masih ku simpan suara tawa kita. Kembalilah sahabat lawasku, semarakkan keheningan lubuk, hingga masih bisa ku rangkul kalian, sosok yang